Hey, good morning, night and day. And, why this product? Why adult briefs? Why serving seniors? I always go back to the same thing. I was lost, I was broken, you could say, confused, afraid, 1,000 adjectives. I don't think they all add up to the same thing. And for me to kind of come out here to reach out to, my dad, someone who, you know, even though my parents were divorced at 1 year old, even though he had left for his own, reasons, for his own needs. Again, I don't think it had anything to do with me specifically at all. But he had things that he had to, holes in himself that he needed to fill, he needed to still figure out. And, I think coming out here when he was sick, it was just kind of, I thought maybe, I'm looking for stability. I'm looking for someone who would protect me. I'm looking for something familiar, because even if, he wasn't in my life, a lot of things, who he was, a lot of the personality traits, a lot of just that familiarity of him. He looks like me, he thinks like me in some ways, and he, there are things in him that I admire, and there's also things in him that I, obviously don't like, but there are things that are also kind of connected with me. There are some of my kind of things that I perceive that I don't love about myself. So, just that thing of, going to somebody who, you hope will protect you, will look out for you. And I'm not here to speak on that. I think that was just my thought process of, what I was looking for, and then why I kind of, when he was no longer here, why I kind of then just gravitated that energy towards seniors, people who have lived life, people who had life experiences, and seeing what the good and bad in that, as I went out and saw, the good behaviors, the bad behaviors, the just got to be a part of that community and see the good and the bad. Sometimes when you get the peek behind the curtain, it's not all what it's cracked up to be, but just seeing the honesty in that, and seeing how I connected with, different aspects of that, and was able to really, I hate to say it, learn to let my guard down. I'm gonna sneeze. I'm not gonna sneeze. Learn to kind of just let my guard down to, more than anything, understand myself through what other people were going through. What were the behaviors that they were doing that I was doing that I didn't like, where people were so kind of sometimes guarded because they were going through a lot. They're experiencing a lot. And when you are going through just a lot of different things, a lot of dynamic change, a lot of life changes, I think a lot of us just want to kind of, you do want to cover up at times, or kind of deflect. I think it's a lot, could be one of the others, or just not pay attention to what's going on, try to keep a blind eye to certain things, because if you don't deal with it, then you don't have to acknowledge it. And so through all the things I've kind of had to go through, and seen other people go through, I don't necessarily want to make it about me. I've always felt like I was in this journey with other people. They were calling me, I was showing up for other people. I've always felt it was side to side. And then what I did on my personal time was, what was I learning, and how can I apply that to my personal life to, be able to have those things, the things that I was seeing. How can I have those things, like a family, and be able to give of myself, and be able to let my guard down, and be able to accept people for who they are, and accept people's kindness and give my kindness, and accept love and give love, and I think to a lot of people those could be simple things, but for me they're not. It's and you could feel sad for me for that, and that's fine. I'm not that's all good. But for me, the sadness was not being able to see it, one, and then take the right steps forward to kind of get past it. And that's something I have to do it every day, even now. That's why I'm able to, that's why I do find kind of that this is important. But through everything I've been through, at first just being there for people, doing these deliveries, having to give, that energy of myself, having to show up for someone every day, show up for myself every day was really hard. But once I got the hang of it, it was just became, no one was looking for me. No one kind of wanted me anyway. I didn't have any, I had kind of given up in a lot of ways. So this kind of gave me purpose and meaning. So that was kind of easy. But I think this to me has been kind of the greatest challenge, and I also think like finding a product and finding somebody who made a product that kind of speaks for me and kind of helps seniors, that was kind of what I say almost a miracle, because it just kind of landed on my doorstep. And then that obviously brings and has brought in so many challenges. But I think it's worth it. It kind of gave me, a new purpose. It gave me a new meaning to kind of want to connect with people, to want to tell a story, to want to kind of share everything I've seen and everything I've gone through, and not share by dumping it on your lap, share by actually sharing, sharing, what I've seen and what I've gone through to hopefully add positivity into people's life, or at least kind of bring a connection, something that they can understand. And even if it's just to kind of be like, fuck that guy, that's fine. At least they're kind of, at least it's bringing some reaction, which to me is fine. But I think what's been so hard is, I've seen this moment, I've seen what other people go through, I've seen kind of just how it weighs on people's kind of soul and their heart when they're going through something, and no one can kind of understand it, and they can't kind of express it because it is something that they haven't been through, and it's something that kind of, brings them back to a helpless place and brings them back to a place where you don't have that confidence, where you don't trust always your instincts. And even when you do, when you're kind of, going at something blind, you're gonna take false steps, until you learn the lay of the land. You're gonna make mistakes. Not everything's always gonna be, and not everyone's gonna understand what you're going through. And even if they do understand what you're going through, they might not want to see it from your perspective. They might be seeing it from their perspective, which, kind of works against you. Not that they're a bad person, but just the way they're coming at it is not really going to be helpful for you. It's not that they can't be of help, but they're not going to see it the way you need them to see it, because they're not going to understand what you're going through. And I do think that's where some of the understanding and communication does come. It becomes really important. And so it's like, how do we kind of focus on those things? How do we set our focus to those little things instead of getting caught up with all the bullshit, all the other stuff? How do we kind of simplify things? And for me, kind of, I hate to say, kind of spilling out what I've been through, letting out my kind of heart, because I think it's important. It's important for me to kind of be able to express myself in a mature way, and kind of not get upset and not let my anxiety, not let my depression get the best of me, and kind of, focus on those things that I have focus on the positivity, focus on doing the task at hand, focus on, other people and what they're going through. And people are going through so much more than I am. So how can I kind of be a bright light for that, and also, enjoy that light for myself? How do I get to enjoy those things that I want for other people? And so, yes, did a product lead me here? Yes. Did seniors kind of having that place to go lead me here? Sure. And I just think it's an important moment that just everyone goes through. I don't think this is about me, about male, female, culture, religion. I think it's all something similar we go through. I don't try to kind of define it at all. I just try to work towards the feeling. I think we all can feel in our heart. We all have feelings. We all know how we feel if we want to look into it. So yeah, do I want people to focus on that feeling of what they're going through, and with this product, what they're wearing, and then what kind of comes along with that, and how that affects them and the people around them? Yeah, that's really, really, really important to me, to be able to focus on that basic thing. How do I feel? How is it affecting me? In turn, how is that affecting the people around me? And how can I handle that in a best way? Or how can the people around me notice that, and so they can handle things in a positive way? And I know it's all gobbledygook kind of words, but I think that's kind of what I show up to try to not only talk about it, but actually like do something that's kind of simple and I can explain and has a simple meaning, and is a moment that we've all kind of been through. You might not, obviously I haven't worn this product since I was a kid, but it is a product that I had to wear at some point. It's the first thing that they put on you. If you start looking at, kind of the feeling you get from it, the feeling that it has for other people who are wearing it, and just all that goes into that process early on, I don't think it changes. I think it's still the same thing. I just think, it's easy to love something that's fresh and new and exciting, and something that's bringing you so much joy, as opposed to something that is, kind of at the end of that light. But I still think, I fucking believe that there's still so much, even if it's a day, even if it's a year, that I think that you have so much to offer. I still think that no matter what stage of your life, if you want to have something to share and something to give that's bright, I still think it's important. For me, it was. And so I don't want you to ever forget that. And that's something that I've had to kind of remember myself, as I started this thing when I was kind of getting to my 30s. You would think life's over. Never would I have thought, 20 years later, that I would be in better shape than I was then, that I would have, be in a better shape kind of mentally, with things around me all be better. Probably not. I think that's kind of what I'm still working on, but just that I do have, to wake up next to my son who tells me he loves me, it just has added something in my life that I just never could have imagined that I would have found again. That just feeling that connection to something. Does that make it easier or harder? No, but it definitely gives me purpose. But when I let him down and let myself down, or if I end up letting, the community of seniors down by not being able to kind of represent this moment that you've given me the opportunity to represent, it will it will hurt, and it will bring up a lot of things, a lot of my insecurities, and a lot of the things that kind of probably put me in the place I was to begin with. But at least now I have the tools, as I said, to fight those things, to fight those battles within. Because the more I learned, the more I realized that a lot of it, I was the biggest part of the problem. But I can't blame myself. I'll take responsibility for some of it. But some of it, you can't see it. I couldn't see it. And without kind of somebody being able to kind of understand what I was going through and kind of point me in the right direction, it was up to me to figure it out. It was up to me to keep pushing forward. And as I kept pushing forward and searching, those people who could help me have come into my life. And whether they've stayed or whether they've come and gone, they've all helped give me positivity and have given me the wind I need to kind of want to push forward, to want to get up with all the uncertainty, whether that's in life or just in my head. So those positivity has made me always try to wake up and, it is night and day, just always try to be the sun on whatever the day was, always try to be that bright spot. But you're talking to somebody who was very, in their own kind of world in a lot of ways and wasn't looking to kind of be someone's bright spot, because I've always, when you're in a dark place and you start to kind of share, people, sometimes you feel like people take advantage of that. They suck your life force out in a lot of ways. And I had to kind of learn how and when to give, and learn how to let my guard down, and learn how to experience things, and just take a deep breath and be patient and learn my process. And so that's kind of where I'm at, and kind of where I'm trying to meet you at. And I've always come to you, and it's been great. I've you've let me in, and I've showed up, and I promise my intentions have always been good. And I think that's why I've been able to stay in this game as long as I have, without ever wanting to sell a product, or without ever wanting to kind of be some sales guy, just some guy who was looking for find that connection. So I had to kind of be who I said I was gonna be, or it's a small world, it's a small town, it's a small community, and I was not gonna let people form an opinion based on things I had done. I wasn't gonna let bad patterns kind of control what I needed to do. So I was gonna show up in my best, and that way I would have a track record that would speak for the person I was. And that's been really important to me. It is really important to me. I ain't perfect, I make mistakes, but I'm gonna fix them. I'm gonna stand up to them, and more than not, I know I'm gonna kill it. Like you're not always gonna get that nurse experience of me like, yay, and this is such a great moment. No, I'm just here to help. If you're in this moment, I'm fucking there with you. I'm strapping on the helmet, I'm putting on the gear, and I'm there to help. I'm here to help in this moment. And so all I ask is, like, instead of me coming to you, since I'm starting to kind of lend voice to this and try to lend voice to you, is to step out of where you are, and take a step to where we can meet, and step to an area that's empty, and then whatever, at least get out of the perspective you have, and have a chance to breathe in a fresh start, and and see if there is something I can help with, or there's something you can help me with. I've learned so much just from how people were, and how they behaved, and how they treated me, and that's really been the life that I needed, and the life that I needed to learn about. So again, I try to make these videos as short as possible, and I'm trying to kind of find a voice for my inside, in my head, and how I feel is one thing, but having to express that, and having to kind of let that go in a way that does connect with people, I don't really know how that does. I know giving someone a good product, giving them a choice, giving them something with a purpose that's meant to kind of keep them dry through the night, is meant to protect them, kind of, I think, speaks to them and speaks to what they're going through, is definitely, what I've aimed to do, and what I continue to do. But then to kind of lend a voice to that, and kind of, try to build a moment within that, is been interesting. And I'm not really out there at the moment. For years, I kind of just ran out there every day and did what I had to do, and really just had faith and belief that something would come of it. And then, I think just like you, I was going through something, and I didn't know what, just going through just a lot emotionally, a lot within myself, and just had a lot of questions I still needed answered. I, maybe a midlife kind of crisis thing, like where was this going? How was I going to be, the person I needed to be to my family? And how was I going to keep this thing going? How was I was going to have to kind of see it a different way, try to come at it, kind of have a fresh start to this whole thing. And what better place than to have a product and to have a purpose. And, I think that's what this is all about. So, I don't get the feedback. I would never come to someone's house and have this conversation with them. And so I just have to kind of put it out into the universe, I guess, and see how people respond to it. And, I've always been someone who can work off of people. So it's like you give me energy and then I can give energy back. And I love that seesaw type of thing. And sometimes, I'm going to have to get out of the way. I can't always help, but if it's something that, can ping pong off each other, and, then I want to do that. I could build off of people's energy, and hopefully they could build off of my energy. I'm trying to do something positive and try to relate in a positive way. So again, it's always going to be that night and day thing. I hate to keep bringing it up, but that's who we are. That's what it is. There's no surprises here. There's no fucking visions of grandeur. It's always going to be something simple. I'm trying to, fill in gaps where they need to be filled in, fill in the holes that are the leaks that are kind of no one's paying attention to, but I know and will end up bringing down the ship. So if I can kind of fix those things and explain why we fix those things and get people to see that, those little things are important because they lead to bigger problems, they lead to bigger questions, they lead to, feeling, not the way we want to feel. I think that's what I look like. That's what I think my job is. I think that's kind of like my purpose, as silly and as small and as stupid that may sound, but when you have no purpose and no connection, fuck it. Like, why not start somewhere? And then if it feels right and it feels good and the reactions you get from people are the things that you're looking for, even if they're just small encounters. I only really want a small circle, but I do want to, affect a lot of people in a positive way. But in terms of I hate that's why this is so tough to do. I just want to hold a tight group and don't really want to have to let my guard down to something bigger, but I can't be who I am to that tight group. I'm letting them down. I'm letting you down if I'm not doing this, in my opinion, and I could be wrong. and I hope I'm not wrong, because then I guess I'll have to I don't know. I don't think I can't be wrong, I guess. This is it. Like, I don't know. This is it. So, I love you more than you probably know, and more than I can ever really express. But, that's my struggle, and that's what I have to deal with on a daily basis. And your struggle is different, but I am there. If I could be there for it in some small way, then, or whatever that is, then I'm up for that. Even if that's just kind of connecting in some small way, or just being there for you in some small way, and that might lead to something bigger. But all I could do is kind of send you on your way, like you've sent me on my way, and sometimes that's good enough. And that's it. So, signing off. Night and day. Bye.